welcome to the Nonsense Chronicles. This is Doug Chachere, and once again, appearing to my left,
Rob Mendiola.
Hey, Rob.
How's it going, man?
Well, it's a Sunday, and we were scheduled to have another guest on today for a great subject we'll talk about later because we're going to reschedule them. But we had to reschedule them because we got a hurricane coming in tonight, and the center of the circle. It's funny. I'll snapshot. Look, I've lived on the Gulf Coast in Louisiana or Texas all of my life. So I will. Over the years, what I started doing is I'll look at the tracks and I'll start snapshotting them. And I can tell whether it's going to be left or right. I'm no meteorologist, but anybody that's been around these things enough, you
we
get
have
to
experience.
Know. Yeah, you get to know them, and it's every year you can multiply the tens, and it's got to be 100 hurricanes. I don't know now. I've been through whatever, but it's I screenshot so I know where they're focusing. And this is the eye, so where the eye is going to hit, that's fine and dandy, and on just to the right of where the eye is, that's the dirty side. That's the worst because it swirls kind of clockwise, so you're getting that wind that's coming right there.
Yeah,
and well, this thing where I thought it would come in maybe just south of the border, or worst case scenario, it would be King County, which is between Brownsville, Texas, and Corpus Christi, which is very low it's very uninhabited area.
Yeah.
It's a lot of farmland because everybody's heard of it down here, the King Ranch,
right?
And it's a lot of ranch land. And I thought it for sure. No, there was a high pressure system to the north that was causing this. They go clockwise.
Yeah.
So this is pushing this thing further to the west. Well, this thing just dissipated. It moved out the way really quick. The hurricane said, "Well, then I'll just come on up." So it's coming up north, and it looks like it's going to hit tonight. I think around, it showed it just 7:00, just south of the coast. So I'd imagine around between 7 and 8 tonight.
Early morning hours, it should be.
No, it's going to be inland.
Big time,
I think between 7 and 8 tonight, it's going to hit. Which is always the case. For some reason, these storms always hit it when it's dark. And I'll get to that in a second, but it's gonna, the eye of the storm will actually be around here, our studio tomorrow around, I think around, probably around 7:00 or so, maybe toward between 7 and 8 a.m. hour. And I'm scheduled to go out of town, but I'm going to wait a little bit. And our guests obviously didn't want to drive into the studio today because everybody's scrambling.
Yeah, smart.
As usual in a hurricane situation, the water on the shelves of every store is gone. Yeah. All the essentials that you have to have. And in fact, last night when I was leaving, I went out to see Rob play. Good show last night, by the way.
Thank you.
And by Dollhouse. And the stores, I left early after their set, and I had to pick something up at the store just like I normally would. But I didn't remember until I saw some people I knew, and it was sure enough. People were starting to get the water, and because we kind of thought it would hit, but then it shifted on us, And normally these storms, there's been 2 storms that I can remember in my 58 years that have drifted. We had one that was called. They used to always have female names for years, and then they shifted it, and they started adding in male names, and then there was a storm called Juan. By the way, my ear's bubbling and right now, so I can hear it. But it was called Juan, and they called it Wandering Juan because it was going between the off Mobile to Louisiana coast. It kept drifting, but it didn't have any. The steering currents were not good at all, and it wouldn't go in. And finally, after about a day and a half to 2 days, it finally came ashore between, I would say, probably Venice, Louisiana, and somewhere around Gulfport. It came in, and I remember that because I got tired of waiting, and I had to go up through Mississippi, and I got tired of waiting, and sure enough, I picked the right time. In other words, the exact wrong time to go because they had an 18-wheeler. I remember because of the big truck, the
The trailer.
The trailer, yeah.
Yeah.
It was on its side on the side of the road because it got blown over, and I hurried up I-55 as quick as I could to get out of that thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been so many over the years experiences with storms, and
yeah, you live on the coast. I mean, you're gonna have it.
right. And most of my life, I have lived in Louisiana. I probably was 40, 50 miles off the water from Vermilion Bay, and then here in living always on the north side of Houston. At first, I guess I lived about maybe 60 miles from any water, and then it's now I'm a little bit further west, so we're a little bit. We got maybe 100 miles between us and the coast. I don't think we have 120.
Yeah, probably not that far.
No, but it's it's not much, but it's enough to cut the storm. In other words, by the time it hits us,
a little weaker.
Yeah, most storms will be hurricane force still, but
more of a tropical depression type state.
And
a lot of rain.
Yeah, a lot of. See, the good thing about this storm is it's gonna allegedly, the way it's moving, it's gonna once they grab land, they usually grab land. They'll shoot a little bit to the northwest because of the motion is going counterclockwise, so it's going to shoot that way naturally. But then it as soon as that happens, maybe 60 to 80 miles in, it'll start going directly to the northeast.
That's the natural kind of progression of the wind.
Because it'll catch the Gulf Stream.
Gulf Stream,
Gulf
Stream, but then the natural highs and all that, that come
across the country. It just normally goes from west to east.
Yeah,
so it'll catch that, and it just naturally goes out. Well, this thing is it's gonna be. It'll be right on top of.
It's a pretty big storm.
Well, it's actually in size, comparatively, it is small compared to like some storms can be, I'm talking about edge of the storm to edge. So not hurricane force of winds are going to be around your center. And that's maybe, maybe 10 to 20 miles out at most. But I mean, 5 miles within, you're going to get the worst of your weather.
Yeah.
But it could be some storms stretch across 300 miles. They're huge storms. This one is a lot more compacted. And when it started, it was very compact. I was like, wow, that is a small storm. But once it hits the Yucatan and kind of breaks up a little bit and gets wobbled, it doesn't dissipate, but it dissipates the compact version of it. So, and then you get over that Gulf with all that heat and moisture, which it was, get back over like the Caribbean. You notice I didn't say Caribbean.
Yeah.
We say it a little bit differently, but it definitely got a little bit bigger in size.
Yeah,
but still,
I think it could cause a lot of rain more than anything.
Yeah, because we had
we flood like crazy in Houston area. Greater Houston area.
Yeah, like 610, the loop around Houston basically becomes like a moat because it has so many underneath passes overs over the other interstates going 59.
Bayou City.
Yeah, and it becomes like a moat around town.
Yeah.
So I have one son that lives actually by the University of Houston. I told him, get out, go to your mom's, and
higher ground.
Yeah, get to high ground.
Yeah.
And I said, there's no question because his safety and Dad doesn't want to help student pay for another car. So that's just how it works.
Absolutely.
And then I think we'll get some impact. Where we live, like where you live and I live.
Yeah.
We get a lot of wind because of
a lot of wind because we're higher.
Yeah, it's open plains compared to so. It's already going to get a lot.
That's literally the only thing I worry about here. It's the wind.
And my wife has lived in Dallas, so she doesn't have a lot of experience. So I'm not leaving town until the worst of this passed. It'll probably still be raining when I leave, but I'm going to see what gets done and before I make sure things are
Driving
okay.
in the rain doesn't really bother me either.
Doesn't bother me either. Yeah.
Doesn't stress me out.
No, but I want the worst of this gone, and then I can assess at the house.
I stress out more when it's dry and people are driving like crazy and like fast and
and
just cutting in and out.
And speaking of which, I showed Rob a picture of me coming here, and I'll take a screenshot of my my screen in the vehicle, and you could tell on using Waze, I was on a back road, but on the main road, getting out, going away from Houston, going away from the coast. Yeah, it's slowed. It's all red. Where
I think people just got. We just got through with one storm. I don't even think it had a name. Correct?
No,
it was just a big tropical depression.
Yeah,
and it caused a lot of problems here.
Yeah,
electrical. Towers were down.
Yeah,
and people were without energy for some.
That was
2 weeks, right?
Yeah, that was the derecho or
derecho.
Yeah, derecho.
Yeah, that straight line wind storm that came through here.
Yeah, now that was
pretty.
That was a lot more powerful than people are going to see in this storm.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see that again.
No,
I hope not.
Well,
and we fared pretty well out here with that.
Yeah, and look, the worst. I'd basically say now that if a bad storm is coming, I'm leaving, and you know what I said. I have insurance. I'm not staying here for 2 weeks without power.
Yeah, exactly.
I've done this before. I've left. In fact, we have a place at Toledo Bend Reservoir where it sleeps like 13 people. It's a camp on the lakes. Got a guest house, and I told friends of mine in my old neighborhood. I said we were all there. I said look, I'm leaving. I'm going. Call me when we have power back. I'll come back to town when it's because look, the stores don't have power. They're going to let people in a little bit at a time after, and they won't have the meat and stuff. They will not be able to keep refrigerator. Plus, it'll all be gone anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to be here, so I'll come back when we have power. And sure enough, we had about 10 to 12 people that stayed out there for. I think we stayed there 12 nights. Until we got power back, and I've left before and stayed in Arkansas. I'll book rooms out of town.
Yeah.
And, I'll come back with a power. I'm not staying. I'm not sitting through. And when I was a kid, we used to always, we rode out plenty of storms, but we always were told, when I was little, I remember like if a big storm ever comes up through New Orleans or from Million Bay, we'll pay the price.
Evacuate.
Well, it was always you would leave and you'd come back, and then people kind of got used to it. Then Katrina came.
Yeah.
And then you had a wall of water push up in the city.
Were you in Louisiana when Katrina happened?
I was actually living in Texas.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah. And I had been in Texas by about a dozen years by
then.
Okay. And we have Loose Illusion, some of these other people.
They were Katrina evacuees.
Yeah. The guys in Drowning Pool, that family there that had to get out after then they've moved since. Two of those guys, their families are from New Orleans, and CJ's mom I know has moved. I think she lives in Arkansas now. So it's it's once that hit, that changed everything. People started taking them. 2005 season was really bad. Yeah. People started taking them serious. Like, okay, we do need to leave because. Like I explained to my son, it's not only that you're in danger if you stay, but it's me or somebody else going to rescue you. Yeah. That you put other lives in danger. If this happens, if the worst case scenario happened, which it did happen.
That's why when they do evacuation orders, people should really heed those.
Yeah.
Because it does put other people in danger.
It does. And, 2005, it was the water pushed into the, you have so many you have Pontchartrain and so many canals, in New Orleans. I mean, mostly when you get there, the land south of New Orleans is all broken up. It's water here, there, and everywhere. And it's been a coastal erosion for years. Mm-hmm. Well, we have a levee system, and we had levees that broke because there was so much water, and that's what caused the flooding. It wasn't the storm. Well,
but those have been improved since Katrina, right?
They have, but it's still.
Yeah, I mean it's still a line.
New Orleans is New Orleans is 5 foot below sea level.
Right. It's below sea level already. So
so you're gonna
any kind of break, any kind of
it's gonna be really bad.
You're gonna get it. You're gonna get brought. It's gonna flood.
Yeah, because all the canals, everything else is full. And you have no choice. So I mean, right after Katrina, same year we had
because that really just helps for storm surges.
Yeah,
but any kind of water that's developing inland is just gonna. Just pile up,
No, and we had another one. We had another storm, and we had several in 2005. But we had the the one that came right after that in 2005 ended up hitting around Lake Charles, but we didn't know if it was going to hit towards Galveston, towards us, or if it was going to hit Lake Charles. And so people started evacuating. They saw what happened in New Orleans. Everybody said, well, I'm not playing that game anymore.
Right.
And those storms were really strong that year.
Mm-hmm.
They were 3, 4s, and some 5s.
Wow.
And a lot of times right before you hit the coast, they'll go down to a 3. But, man, they're packing the pressure and they're pushing the waves. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And,
the storm surge are already
yeah.
before it even makes landfall.
I got on at that evacuation. It was going to be like a day and a half before I was going to leave, before we started getting any impact. I left at 3 o'clock in the morning to get on. Well, it's going to be Interstate 69, but it's 59 from Houston and goes northeast to Texarkana, Arkansas. It goes all the way to Chicago. I was going to get on at 3 o'clock in the morning. I get on the feeder to get on, and I see nothing but lights. It's already bumper to bumper. And let me tell you, it took 12 hours for me to get 48 miles. 48 miles.
Wow.
It took me 12 hours.
That's crazy.
They had cars on the side of the road. They told everybody, if you run out of gas, leave your hood up.
Yeah.
And people would come in, if they could, and give you gas. Well, look, there wasn't going to be enough gas trucks. There were piles. I mean, it was something out of an apocalypse. There were piles of cars here and there that just ran out of gas in the same area, and all had their hoods up. And by the time I got to around Shepherd, which is about 48 miles from Texas, I had friends that called, and I'll never forget this. Well, before they called, I said, I'm going to run out of gas before this happens. I'm not playing this game anymore. I went back home. It took me 30 minutes to get back home to where it took. Yeah, and I stopped, and I stopped at a Walmart on the way back home, and Action Alley, all the displays, they were all gone.
Yeah,
I had the guy go in the back, and he got out. He went in the back of the store and he found a pack of lunch meat and I think of chocolate milk, and that was it. It was terrible, man.
Yeah, that's terrible.
But excuse me.
I mean, on the plus side, you at least can appreciate people were, taking it serious enough to get supplies.
Yeah, very much so. And excuse me, I was lucky enough to where I had a friend call and said, Doug, we have a car in our garage full of gas. So the next morning before the storm hit, still I had time. I went to their house, took their little car, and I got to Arkansas. And it was almost no traffic then, which was great. Everybody had decided to leave the same time I did. But it's good to get out. If you can get out 3 or 4 days, like in fact, when I was taking my kids during Ike, that's the storm we stayed at the lake. I remember the school saying, well, they don't have off today, but they had one. I said, guess what? My kids have off today because we're leaving town now because I've already played that game. I'm not playing that game again.
Yeah, that's craziness.
Yeah, so I was well out on fence. In fact, we went to Arkansas before we went down to Toluca Bend, and would you know that I was in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and I'll be damned if the storm didn't come up there after it left here.
Wow.
So we had that morning. I remember it was about 5 a.m. The power went out in Arkansas. I was like, God dang, we just can't avoid the storm. Yeah. And we came back on a little highway. I think it's 71. And there was a big ass tree that was across a 2-lane highway.
Wow.
And cuts through around the mountains to the Ozarks. And somebody had just chopped it down. I was like, thank God, because you couldn't see that during the dark. So there's all kind of things that could happen in those storms, especially if not only vehicles getting tossed over for gusts, because the hurricane winds they're not steady. They come in waves. They're gust, then it slows down, then it's gust. And we had, man, that's the thing at night. Talking about storms, they come at night and you hear,
the howl.
And I mean, it is the most unnerving sound, and it lasts, man.
We had that out here last time.
Yeah,
and it was unnerving, for sure.
It is, and I mean that's
the only good thing is it was light. It was daytime.
Yeah, and you can,
but it got real dark.
Yeah,
almost night.
And
looking.
it can spawn tornadoes. They're usually not very strong, but a tornado is a tornado, you know, and you don't want to be underneath it. And but you can't see anything usually when it happens at night.
Yeah.
And you know, then the next morning you go out and there's all kind of damage, you know. And you know, I pulled up for Katrina, like I was in Texas, but and that was end of August, start of September. Like that's the last 2 weeks of August and the first 2 weeks of September are the sweet spot. Now that's where you'll get the most destructive storms traditionally during the hurricane season, which lasts from June 1st to November 1st. They've been on both sides of that, but it's very rare. But I went to Gulfport. I went through Gulfport. And I had seen this scene before when I've been there before, where you have limbs and trees that like going down streets that people have had cut, and they're there for weeks or months after, because it just takes a while to get that much rubbish
it's a lot of work.
Taken out. But the Grand Casino, which we used to have sales meetings by, and people would go to the Grand at night. The Grand Casino, this is before they allowed land-based casinos in Biloxi and Gulfport. The Grand Casino in Gulfport was a big boat, and it was a huge boat. It wasn't a little one. And that thing had flipped over the coast highway there and had gone off on land. It looked like, and then they had set it back in the water by the time I had gone through, like in January. And it looked like an accordion. It looked like somebody had had squeezed it and then stretched it back out. It looked terrible. Obviously, it was not open whatsoever. They still had sand on the road.
Wow.
Like you had sections that had sand over it, like you could pass on the other lane. You know, it takes a while to clear up out these roads. There's a stretch of Highway 87 on the other side of Galveston, between, it's the High Island area, between the Louisiana border.
Yeah.
And where it comes through Port Arthur and all that, all the way to where it hits to this point. I can't remember the damn name of it now, but where it comes out and it meets Galveston, there's a ferry that goes between. That highway used to go all the way to Louisiana. It doesn't anymore because it got covered so many times that they just said, you know what, we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
Because that immediately goes on water. Because even if you don't, you have to, it's pushing water, a wall of water. So the water just keeps going up. It's not like a tsunami and stuff. It's just very slow, and it rises.
It's incredible.
And it rises, and it rises. Yeah. And so they just gave up on it, you know. And I had a friend yesterday, and one of the Engel family, you know, which is like my Texas family. One of the uncles went and he has a camp down there. And he went and got his boat off the Texas coast yesterday. And now that storm is actually... He was going to be on the dirty side. Looks like he'll be on the other side now. So, because it's going to be closer to us in Matagorda. He was down in Matagorda. He went and got his boats out, and they shutter. You know, it's up on stilts. All those houses or camps that are out there, they're all on stilts, you know, because the ones that aren't there anymore. In fact, if you go anywhere around if you go anywhere around the coast in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and you will see a lot of slabs where places used to be, you know, and you know, people make jokes about hurricane parties, and look, let me tell you, they, you know, before it was after I was born, but when I was a baby, I think it was 68 or 69. Camille came through.
Oh yeah,
and you know, I'd hear stories about that, and before that, Audrey came through Lake Charles in '57. My dad was there, and tell me about the water coming up through that area. Well, Camille came through as I think a Cat 5.
Wow.
And they had an apartment complex there in Bay St. Louis called the Richelieu Apartments. And they had people there having a hurricane party. They all gathered around. Well, you can go today where the Richelieu Apartments used to be. There's a slab there.
Wow.
It killed most of those people there. They had survivors, but it killed a bunch of those people there. Yeah, and you got to take those storms serious, man.
Definitely. Mother Nature is a beast. Yeah. Definitely not something to take lightly.
No, because the water gets higher and higher and higher. And we're talking inland. Like when I went down to Gulfport, I would say it was probably 3/4 of a mile. Anything that was there was gone. Like they had, anybody that's ever been to a Waffle House before, it's basically made out of the cinder blocks.
Mm-hmm.
They had the slab where it used to be, because I remember where it was.
Wow.
And it was gone, man.
Yeah, man, it's powerful.
Anything that's there will be washed away because a wave is very strong. You get out in the water and you swim and you can feel it top, but if it's just pushing,
and then this has it don't only have water, it has debris, and that intensifies that, magnifies that strength.
Oh yeah, very much so. And then everything is picking up all these cinder blocks, and especially the power poles and everything else. It's pushing, and
those become weapons.
I mean,
of mass destruction.
Yeah, it's
literally.
because it's. I mean, you think of a tree down or like a power pole. That is a ramming log. You know, like
and the water's carrying it like nothing.
Yeah, like you're like if you're gonna storm a fortress back, in a castle there. You're using that is what that is, and trust me, when it's coming, it's going to plow through.
It magnifies it in impact.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah,
and you'll.
Or if you thought you're going to swim through the water, and there's all this debris, you're not going to do it.
No,
it's
you're not. No.
Yeah.
And most people that they pull out and survive, they're hanging on to stuff. It was so terrible in Katrina. There's so many of those people went through their house, they had to break through their attics.
Yeah,
and
that still amazes me how much water was dumped.
Yeah,
Katrina. Yeah,
because once it was in there, it was in a bowl,
crazy.
and there was nowhere for it to drain out. Because then you're talking about, the sources for it to drain are still flooded, so that water can't go anywhere. For a long time, and you're talking about a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it was a long time.
Yeah, like here, in fact, they've had problems with the Livingston Dam, which I saw within the week, and that's kind of scary because.
Here it comes again.
Yeah, because guess what? They've had
you got some nervous people out there, I'm sure.
I bet they do. Anybody that lives down like the Trinity River, Ingalls that live
that
off
whole
of
Trinity Bay Basin.
It's
floods instantly.
Yeah, everything like south of Lake Conroe, because they'll start releasing water down the dam, to be safe. And,
they're probably already releasing.
Yeah, and all those people that live down it, guess what? What's going to happen? Yeah, the water that was in the lake is now in your backyard or in your house. And so hopefully
that's why we're at.
That's right.
Because I looked before we bought, and I was like, I want the highest ground possible.
That's right. So even though we won't get flooded, we might not be able to drive anywhere or go here or go there.
Or might wind up with the slab where the house used to be.
Yeah.
Literally, that's the only thing I worry about out here.
Well, like driving out here, I saw that on your street there's a guy that has a metal shed right down the road, and if it goes as planned, that thing could definitely be exit. So we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't get too bad, but
I'm hoping it'll cut down the strength before it gets here.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Because we're still a little bit from the coast.
Yeah, hopefully it will. But like I said, these are just things. And
Houston's probably going to flood.
Yeah,
no doubt. I don't doubt that one bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, it depends. It doesn't seem that big. A mile across, like it's not the 300 from one side to the other side, mile across storm. But I mean, because everything that's here will drain down into Houston.
Yep, exactly.
So that's what the problem's going to be.
That's the problem with Houston.
And that's going to be the problem with the Trinity and everything else, because it definitely will it's going to pass over that. But that's when we talk about these storms, and they're interesting. I'm fascinated with tracking them, just like I am tornadoes. But man, in reality, I don't want to be. Every year we hope, God, I hope another one doesn't hit us, because it's a big inconvenience. You're talking.
It's inconvenience, but that's what we live with,
Yeah,
that's real life.
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier with Victor living up in Louisville, and how during the storms that they had come down to, they had these co-ops. All these power companies get together and they'll send trucks down to help, because one company cannot put all these lines back together and get people power. I couldn't get it later that night. It's like I said, when I lost power, it was for 12 days, and I didn't even have power lines down where I was at, but guess what? The system that fed into me did.
Yeah.
And then his area got hit by tornadoes, and they're like, well, who's going to work on that? Because they were everywhere else. But they will have plenty of companies, prepare to come but still it will take days. If especially for the people that are down on the coast to get power. I don't know what we're going to have up here. It just depends.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of roads that I know that I won't be able to take because they'll be low lying.
Yeah.
My dad's already told me, my travel plans to go out through Louisiana and that area between Orange, Texas, and Louisiana border.
Yeah.
They've actually had water over the interstate there with hurricanes before.
Sabine River area.
Yeah, during Ike, there's plenty of pictures that you can look on the internet. Just do a search of highway on interstate Hurricane Ike, and I'm talking about on an interstate. There's people going full blast in a boat motor, in a boat, going down on bass boats going down the interstate, and I'm not kidding. There's water as far as you can see. Yeah. So that's how bad the water gets, because the interstate system is supposed to be built above any of this. It's not like the low-lying roads. But even though that is built like that, the interstate system was underwater here during that. Yeah, so on I-10, you can look up I-10 and it'll show you water on I-10. And not just one little scoop of water. I'm talking about as far as you can see water on I-10 underwater. Yeah. So hopefully none of that happens. We'll see, but we're just saying. But
it's good to hear that everyone's preparing.
Yeah.
So that's always smart.
That was a wake-up call in 2005.
Yeah, I think we've had too many of those already.
Yeah, so as always, just be prepared and
be safe.
Yeah.
Stay safe.
Stay safe and prepare. If you can get out, if you're anywhere where a hurricane hits, get out days in front of it. Just go to see family, go get book a hotel room because you'd be surprised. And there's a lot of places, too, that offer rates. If you tell people that are evacuating, I've got very cheap rates with Marriott before and Hilton.
Get on the reward programs and stuff. That helps
but
out.
they will offer to any like if you're evacuating, they have a rate for you. So just get out of town, get far away, go somewhere that's going to have power. You have insurance on your home,
which you should.
Yeah,
you should have insurance on your home.
And most people, you got to carry. If you carry a mortgage, you definitely will have insurance on your home. Yeah, so be safe out there, and we will talk to you soon. Yep. Please like and subscribe.
Later.